So what's it like being a young manager or a young leader? What are the challenges that you face that are different than maybe someone who's leading or going into leadership at an older age where they have more experience under their belt? So not just what you face, but how do you get through it? I have a guest for you today, Shasta Haddock, who is the COO of Epic BDC, a business development center. She's been in the automotive industry and running BDC since she's been 19, and 10 years, 11 years later now, she still has that feeling of, well, maybe am I young? Do I have enough experience when I'm managing older people? Phenomenal, phenomenal guest. And I'm so happy you joined us on today's episode of You're in Charge with me, Glenn Pasch. This podcast, we show up every single week to bring you guests and strategies and tips to help you become the leader that you want to be, whether you are brand new at leadership or you're just an experienced leader who's looking to refine your skills. So I'm excited to dive into this. I hope you are as well. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge with Shasta Haddock. All right, Shasta, thank you so much for being here. Very excited to talk to you. I just realized you told me before we started this that you also have a podcast, Chicks in Charge, and 130 episodes. And in all that time, you've never been a guest on anyone's podcast, and this is the first time you've been a guest, so I'm honored. How does it feel to be on the other side of the questions?
I now understand why all of my guests say that they're nervous. And I'm like, oh, you got nothing to worry about. And it's funny, even after doing this as many times as I have, I'm like, oh God, I'm a little nervous. So
that's all right.
I hope I'm interviewee as well as I interview.
Oh, you're going to be fine. We're just going to have a conversation. So I'm really excited to tackle this topic because as we were talking about, points and I followed your career and I really respect what you guys are doing. But when I broached a couple topics to you, you said, Glenn, yeah, those are good, but what about this topic? And it just was a light bulb moment for me because being a young leader is what you said to me is like, there's challenges to be a young leader in any industry, but especially in automotive or just in business in general. You mentioned family business at times. There's a lot of dynamics going on. So I'm so excited to tackle this topic. But before we get into it, just give the audience a little bit of history about how you moved into a leadership position to have that frustration or challenge of being a young leader.
So I, when I came into the automotive industry, I was 19 years old. I was a baby, as they say. And my work history up to that was so vast and wide. I worked for a senior care facility. I worked fast food, a skating rink, like all sorts of things. Found my way into a dealership in the BDC, of course, and started there. Really did not get along with my BDC manager and really tried to stick it out as long as I could. But there was definitely some favoritism going on with other employees, a little bit of nepotism. And so there was a day where I couldn't do it anymore and decided, you know what, I knew Robin, of course, and her agency. And I said, you know what, if you can afford to pay me full time, I would really like to just come join you. And at the time, SCP was doing social media marketing. This was about 2016. And I just came on full force and have been with the company ever since. We developed Epic BDC in 2019, late 2019. I joined the team in 2020. Moved from SCP to Epic and was like, oh, so I knew how to be a BDR. I didn't know how to run a BDC.
Right.
So really just learning along the way and all of the struggles that came with that, trying to reach out to industry experts and be like, okay, what do we do about this, this, and this? Working in CRMs I'd never worked in before. And so, I think becoming a leader was really the process for me was just having to roll with the punches and learn as I went when other people really wouldn't help me.
That's a great point. And I think that's a great starting point because I think there's a lot of people over the last few interviews, we've touched on this. And I just did had a conversation with a trainer who was saying that in terms of leaders, sometimes we invest a lot in the agents or the reps or downstream, so to speak. but we don't invest time really in training the managers of those teams. We assume that if they were a top performer, they can run a team, but it's a completely different skill set. And you're not the first person that said, I feel like I had to learn on my own, ask for help. Other people didn't want to help me. They saw me as a threat. So when you were going through, what were some of the first, and the reason I want to get tactical is I'm sure there's people sitting out there listening going, I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
So what were some of the areas you went to learn? What were some of the, big boulders, so to speak? Like, what were the big things that you felt you had to tackle first in terms of developing yourself as a leader?
So before the part of that I kind of skipped was, in the meantime between leaving the dealership and joining the BDC, there's like a 5-year time gap where I was running what is known within our company as the elite response team. And so essentially it is a BDC, but for Facebook, where, we're running messenger ads. We're bringing conversations into Facebook Messenger, but then we needed a team to handle those messages. So
Right.
I created, built, organized that team, their schedule structure, their scripting, their responses, all of that stuff, and had been doing that, which while it's similar to BDC, is not BDC. And so when I got pulled over to BDC, it was extremely sudden. The manager that we had in place was kind of going through a little life crisis, and we had to make a decision one day on the executive leadership team to kind of be done with him. And I was the only one semi-qualified for the job. So I took over. And this was, like I said, this was early 2020, where dealerships, I mean, we were right in the height of COVID. Dealerships were sending their BDCs home. It was growing faster than we could even keep up with it. And it was really developing Epic BDC at the same time. And so trying to not only maintain, but grow when you don't know what you're doing, that was probably the biggest challenge. And so it was going and sitting in the BDC next to the BDRs that I was now the leader of, and watching what they're doing on a daily basis. Show me your follow-up in this CRM, show me your follow-up in that CRM, and then reaching out to reps at the CRM companies and asking them, hey, what are we doing that is not good, or what are we doing that could be done better? What reports do I need to be using? And really just trying to learn that way. I need to learn the CRMs, because when you're an outsourced BDC, you're not just with one CRM. We had
Right.
Promax, Vin Solutions, eLead, Dealer Socket. We had all of them, and all of their reports are different. And so having to jump in and learn not just one from the ground up, but all of them from the ground up. And so I really relied heavily on that. And then, of course, had been connected to some really good BDC managers, around the country. Some of them did really well helping me, and other ones I could tell saw me as a threat. Just because, like, I could lose my job to you. And so they would keep me at arm's length and not tell me as much information. And then at that point, I really just took to Facebook and started looking for Facebook groups.
Right.
And that's probably just the millennial in me. But was thinking, like, what BDC expert Facebook groups are out there. And that was really before I got connected with LinkedIn, or even had a network. We really hadn't been going to a lot of conferences, so I didn't have a plethora of people in my pocket to pull from.
But I think that's really great. And for those of you, I know sometimes we speed through some of the vernacular, but BDC is a business development center, which means I have agents on the phone answering questions, answering calls, or proactively following up and reaching out to people who've submitted their information for help at a dealership. And, or it might be considered a call center to a lot of people who are listening. But what I really liked about that story, first, is the initiative. And I think that for any new leader, whatever age you are, I know we're focused a little bit on young leaders, and we'll dive in deeper into that. But anyone who gets put in a position of leadership of a team, what you did, I think, is very smart, is you went right to the front lines and said, let me watch what they're doing. Let me learn what they're doing. Let me document it, right? To see if that's the right can we build a process? Is that the right process? Or are multiple people doing different things and we got to get them all on one? Or reaching out also to the vendor community, the vendor or the provider of that tool, that technology, and leveraging them. I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to, or don't think they have permission to, call up their technology provider and said, can you teach me how to use your technology, your tool? I think that's really, one, admirable. And two, I think it's a great blueprint for anyone who's listening, if you're struggling to understand, go figure it out. Go find the experts. There's someone in the dealership or the business you're in right now that is an expert on that tool. Sit with them. Show a little humility. Let them teach you. Doesn't mean you don't know how to run a team. It's just, I need to know this is new to you. And I really, really like that. So once you got, and COVID, threw a monkey wrench into everybody. And so also that comment you made about business accelerating, where again, if you don't have processes and structures, you're building on, wet sand, and, everything's sort of bobbing around. But I want to really focus in on this idea of young, because when you brought it up to me, you said two things, and one, I went through it. Two, I was on the other side. I was the older. It's the older person. Is how do I, as a young manager, young leader, how do I coach people who are older, more experienced than me, be it their agents, or I'm working on a team and there's other managers and I'm the rookie, or I'm just young? How do I do that? So talk to me about that experience, what you were feeling, what you did to try to get through it, good and bad.
So for me, I was really lucky that I started off as a BDC agent when I came into this role, because I had, and I was, not to toot my own horn, I was a good BDC agent, comparatively. And so I had the knowledge of, how conversations should go. And then I had a little bit of the leadership experience from running the Facebook team that I was talking about. But the difference was the demographic of each of those teams. So my Facebook team was almost always young females in their, like, low 20s, or higher teens, like 19, 20-year-olds. Those were kind of just the people who were most familiar with Facebook, and
Right.
having those conversations. And then when I came over to the BDC, I had people on my team who were in their 30s, 40s. I think I had someone in their 50s. I mean, it was much different. And so I think that I walked in maybe with a little bit of ignorance about it. And that's, ignorance was bliss in this perspective, because I didn't see the age difference. I saw a team who needed help, and
Hmm.
I saw that I needed to learn what they were doing, and, to be able to help them.
Right.
And so I just jumped right in. And I think that, not for me, not acknowledging it, like, hey, your new boss is 20, 30 years younger than you. Like, it never felt like that to me. And there was times where I could feel like it did to them,
Right.
where we would run into scenarios where, I wasn't getting the respect I deserved, and not to be that person, but there's certain things, that we come across that we have to, handle a certain way. And so, I mean,
So
really,
in a situation like that, right? In a situation like that, you're coaching, you're sitting with someone who's older, and you could just feel it. Like, who are you to tell me what to do? I've been doing this as long as you've been, that type of.
yeah.
So what did you do? Because again, I like this to be somewhat tactical for someone. So someone sitting there going, yeah, I have people on my team, they give me the stink eye. They won't listen. They, nod their head, but I know they're not. How do you approach it? Or would you recommend, maybe not necessarily what you did back then because it was a learning experience. What would you tell that person today based on your experience, how to approach that situation?
I had to prove myself with my expertise. So whether that was, they were asking me questions as far as what do I say to this customer, or, we do TOs in the BDC where if, the agent can't close the appointment, they hand it off to somebody else
Hmm.
live, and to see if that person can say even the same exact thing, but hearing it from a second voice helps you
Right.
get it. So even doing those TOs for them, or answering those questions that they didn't know how to answer themselves, that otherwise, they would either have to call the store, talk to the sales manager to get some type of answer on that. I really just made myself that expert, and, tried to foresee those questions before they even came up, or jump in there and start doing some text messages with them. And they're like, oh, I really like these responses, like just being outside of the box of what they were used to. And I think that's really how I got it as fast as I did, is that I just jumped in right next to them and did the job. and they saw, okay, she actually knows what she's talking about, because it was, proving itself. The appointments were coming in, they were showing, they were selling. And I just, I think at that point, that was really what it was, is, hey, I'm here to help you guys, not hurt you guys.
I think that's really great because there is always a chip on people's shoulders and especially in sales, any sales department. Can this person sell? I get that sometimes when I go into dealerships. Have you ever sold a car? And I said, well, I'm not here to sell a car. I'm here to help you with your marketing, or I'm helping here with designing a process. I'm not here to sell a car. And I will tell people, I won't try to teach you the quote unquote road to the sale. That's not my expertise. But I think that's just also years of dealing with that. But everybody has to, feel that, that tug of, do you know what you're talking about? What I really
Mhm.
admired, and I think those of you listening to take from what Shasta's saying, is the fact that you went in and helped. You didn't just tell someone to do that. I think is the biggest mistake. You sit at your desk and you lecture and you talk about numbers and you say things like, pick it up and you better do this. And, all of a sudden you got your manager super logo on and I'm super manager. I think that's the disconnect. I think the winning strategy for anyone listening and to what I'm hearing is, I sat down with them. I did it. I was in the trenches with them. Whether I did it or not, the mere fact that I sat down next to them and was willing to do that means a lot to them, where they will say, oh, they are here to help because your actions are showing it, not just your words of, I think the trainer said it before. He had someone who got promoted and said, good, now I don't have to deal with people. You're like, oh my God.
No, you have to deal with people more now.
You're right, right. And a lot, and because you're dealing with them and their people. I really like that. So, what about, did you ever suffer like imposter syndrome? Like, how did I get here? And what if they find me out? Have you ever run
Yeah.
into that?
Oh, to this day, to this day. And it's funny because Robin and I talk about it all the time. Like, we have the by appointment only event coming up again in June, and she was asking me the other day, "Are you going to speak at this one?" I'm like, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Like, why do you want me to speak? And so it's still very much there to this day. And I think a lot more of us go through it than we realize. Like, there's a few people who are very comfortable, being on that stage, sharing their message. For example, we'll say, Frank Lopes, Jonathan Dawson, Shaka Dyson, that just, they do it all the time. And they're like, I know my stuff. And I know that the message I have to share is really good. Where, you know, for me, I don't know if it's because of my youngness. I mean, I've been in the automotive industry for 10 years now, going on 11, and it still sometimes seems to me like it's not enough to have earned um my knowledge badge. We'll put it in like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts terms. That, I actually know my stuff, and I've proved it time and time again within my own organization. But when you're coming across somebody out there in the rest of the world trying to prove it to them and show them, hey, I'm actually legitimate. And I think sometimes we don't even believe it ourselves. And I don't know if it comes from being a woman, being a young woman, being in I know we were going to get into this topic anyways, but being in a business where I work for my mom, all of the things stacked against me. And I don't know which one of those probably feeds into it, but it's definitely one of them, or all of them.
Right. Well, as someone who's seen you speak, I would tell you, you shouldn't worry about it. It doesn't mean it's easier. It does take practice. There are techniques and things of that nature. But one of the best pieces of advice, I mean, I was an actor, so that, you stumble through that world. But moving to speaking, someone said to me, they want to hear what you have to say. They want you to be successful. They're not sitting there going, I hope you fail. And when you get out there, he told me, this speaker professional, he was phenomenal. He would say, what are you trying to teach them? And focus on that, not what they think of you. Because as soon as you go out and say, well, what are they going to think about me? Oh, you're in your own head about you, versus, no, I'm here for you, and talk to them and educate them. The key is just having a clear point of what I'm educating. When you get up there and you don't know what you're going to say, well, that's no different than, as you said today, I'm a little nervous being on this. I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't seen you fumble a question. I haven't seen you fall on your face, right? It is that. So I will be a big advocate for you on there. You did say something about working for family. I work with my brother, so work with family. So there is a different dynamic. You've touched on it a couple times in, pre-recording and even here, of working for your mother. Explain what that experience was and why it was. You brought it up with a sense of, ooh, I don't know if that was good or bad.
It's it's interesting, and she and I both always kind of toy around with the idea of, how public do we want this information to be? Or when we, meet somebody new or start working with a new dealership, like, do we say something? How do you just like bring that up? Do we wait for them to figure it out? And so it's, we've been doing it for, my entire time in the car business, 11 years now. She worked with me at the dealership. She was the marketing manager there when I was in the BDC. And we've gotten really good at it. Back then, I was still living at her house. Like I said, I was 19. And so we had to set up pretty firm boundaries at that point, being together almost 24/7. Work is work, home is home. We keep them separate, and really just built that very early on. And at work, she's Robin. Most of the time at home, she's Robin too. But just to calling her Robin, it feels weird to call her mom sometimes. But I think those boundaries being high and tight is really what did it. But what's funny to me is that, and you'd have to know her, and I know you do, but anybody listening, you'd have to know her to know how much of a go-getter she is. And her shoes are the biggest shoes to fill. Like, she just developed and launched almost on her own a whole other arm of the company that is a mobile app. And she's 60 years old. And the fact that she just developed an app, being a woman in automotive at 60 years old, like, it just blows my mind. And so I think that I'm constantly trying to chase after her and show like I'm worthy of, being in her shadow. And it's incredibly a huge shadow to be in, but it makes me work harder for sure. And, we've had the negative outcomes because of it. People losing their absolute mind because they weren't told, far enough in advance that I'm her daughter. And it's like, okay, what would that have changed?
Right. Exactly.
And then, I've gotten to meet a lot of great people because of her too. And so it's, there's days where it's a good thing and it's a rough thing. I would never ever call it a bad thing. There's the rough times definitely do not outweigh the good ones. So she invests so much in me, and our entire leadership team, our managers here, she's constantly pouring into us, giving us books to read, podcasts to listen to, introducing us to other people in the industry. So, I've definitely gained more from it than ever would be negative. But to say that the industry doesn't see it in a weird way is.
Well, I will be transparent here. I would not have known, and I didn't know, and this is I didn't, and I think you've done a very good job of creating your own persona, and I think that's really important for people who are listening, who in a family dealership, working with siblings in a family dealership, or am I good enough, or even family dealership, or even the person who brought you in, your mentor, and I don't want to let them down. And I think that, especially for young people, it is something that's important, but it can't be, you have to be careful of that. You're not living your life for that person, being inspired by them. They're on a different journey than you are, but working hard, doing the job, that's all anybody expects. But I think you're in a good opportunity, and you're right there. Listen, I get it from people, you and your brother, who's older, and does that matter? And I'm like, I don't even think about it half the time. Or, in other family endeavors, I've had friends who are in family businesses and they go, it doesn't matter, or it is really a big issue and it's almost toxic. And so, as I said, I think you've done a very good job, because I'm pretty perceptive a lot of times, but for me not to know, and it doesn't matter that I knew or not, but I don't think it's a worry. I think that people who are worried about that, They have their that's an issue. They're just looking for a reason to blame failure versus they should be excited about the fact because you're both invested in the company, you're both invested in the future. I would be excited for that as anything else. Um, so
I think of it as, in a dealership, you can't hide behind it as well as maybe we have, where the owner's name is on that building,
sure.
it's on the sign, it's all over the website, and then, say their son works for him or something like that, and he's got to carry that name. And I mean, we've seen it in movies, I think probably more than anything, where, the son comes in his father's shoes, but he's just a jerkwad and is just there riding on his coattails, and it's given us this perception that all of them are like that. So as soon as you hear, "Oh, well, I work for my dad." "Oh, okay, you were handed this job, you didn't earn it."
Right, right.
It's a preconception that we've definitely got to do a much better job at getting rid of, but it's all over the place, and it's one of the reasons why, we don't just come straight out and generally tell people, just because it's already hard enough being a young woman in
No,
automotive.
I think it's very smart because I think you're 100% right because the people will start judging and start making preconceived, observations. You got this because of your mother and all the rest versus just on your own merit. And that's why a lot of people and I've been at dealerships. I was at one maybe a few weeks ago. I had absolutely no idea that the general manager and the general sales manager of the other store they were on the same property, they were married. Wouldn't have known. Afterwards, I was, oh, and they go, oh, and by the way, that's her sister. And I was like, it didn't even click with me. There was everybody just worked. So I think, yes, I think it could be a pro and a con, but I think that's no different than you being hired in because the manager's a friend of yours,
Mhm.
right? And then that judgment happens as well. So I think it's a really good lesson for younger people who are there because maybe your dad got you a recommendation in, but that's I look at it as the only thing that happened was in this case your mother put you in a position. That's it. She's not doing your job. If I recommended my son for an internship last year with one of a friend of ours company in automotive, and I told him, I said, I'll get you the introduction, but you have to do the interview. You have to. I'm not doing this. And
Yeah.
he got it, and they came back to me and said he was great. I love him. My team love, and I was very proud of that. But all I can do is open the door. You
Correct.
have to do the job. So for anyone in that position, what Shasta was talking about is just remember that in the back of the head. You're doing the job. No one's doing it for you. Now, if you're failing at it, get help. If you're doing well, accept it, but also understand that as good as you're doing, there's always going to be that. You just have to take it, put it out of your mind. Now, I'm not saying this is easy because I've had that. I still battle certain things for a long time till maybe 15 years ago where there's doubt and well, what if could I do it if I could I do it in an environment that wasn't family owned? And I was like, yeah, I could. Like, but for a while you go, no, I'm not sure. But I would say I could put you anywhere because based on just and again, for all of you listening, you put yourself in this position. Whatever you did, you started at 19, right? I think from what you told me, you've been married, you were married at a younger age, you have kids. That's a lot of responsibility. That's why sometimes I look at people when I interview people who are in the military, people who played sports in college, people who are married young. That's responsibility.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that and all that you've done and all that young people in those positions do, there's a reason you got the job.
Mhm.
And you have to have faith. I'm not saying it's easy. There's always doubt. And for young leaders out there, find yourself a mentor that can help you where you can feel open to it. So let me ask you that question then. Who besides, I know you know your mother, big influence. We've talked about that. But who else has been a mentor for you in this? How did you find those mentors or what do you look for in a mentor? What do you appreciate in a mentor so that young, people listening to this will know who to go look for?
There's so many. I mean, I say it all the time, I would be nothing without my network. And your network is your net worth. A conversation I was just having last week with somebody, when I go to conferences, I don't go to meet with dealers, which is like the opposite of generally what vendors do. I find other people to meet with that are either on the vendor side, the, motivational speaker side, the other people who are there. And I want to learn from them. I want to have a wealth of people in my pocket that if I need help, I can call and reach out to them. That being said, people who I probably call and lean on the most, Anthony Alagona is definitely one,
Mm-hmm.
which is hilarious because we're in the exact same space, outsource BDC training, like we do the exact same things. There has never been a time where he did not answer my questions or help me. I mean, he's even hopped on a Google Meet with my entire BDC team, amping them up, giving them some good pieces of information. So, I mean, if I'm looking BDC wise, him definitely, and Sean Armorer, he's done the exact same thing, hopped on Google Meets for me, never asked for a single dollar, just gave me information that I needed, just a phenomenal person. Bobby Heron, who, dabbles a little bit in BDC space, but mostly on the marketing side of things, has been phenomenal to me. Especially as a woman in automotive.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the board of Women in Automotive. Veronica Dunford. I mean, so many people that I call and, can ask a question to. Hey, what are you seeing here, and here? What are you doing about this, and that? That have never turned away the chance to help me. And those are really the people that I look for.
I think that's such a great lesson for all of the folks, regardless of age, is having that network of people. And I thought it was very interesting because I think sometimes people miss opportunities finding a good mentor because they say, well, they're in the same industry, they won't help. Two of my dear friends, is Troy Spring, who is in the same industry, Michael Cirillo, same industry, Anthony, we do similar thing. It's fine because we always said, my brother and I, we came to this realization when we first started our company. We did smaller conferences. We still do bigger conferences, and you've been to some of our conferences. We did one, and we had a gentleman named Paul Potratz way back in the day. He had a marketing agency, and people would say, why would you have him on this sort of tour with you when you both do the same thing? And we joked, and we said, well, let me put it this way. If he somehow had 1,000 clients, and I had 1,000 clients, we'd both be doing cartwheels down the street, and there's still 16, 20,000, 30,000 other people out there. So there's enough for everybody. Yeah. And that idea of competition versus helping, I appreciate those people because in a weird way, Anthony's the perfect person. Sean's the perfect person because they know exactly what you're going through, right? Exactly. Sean and I, Troy and I sometimes say, we're going through the same thing. Mm-hmm. Michael will say, we're going through the same thing, or I just went through it, or it's his turn to call me, or it's my turn to call him. But having that network is so important in the industry. And also what I appreciate is outside of your company. Yeah. Right. Too often they only know people in their dealership. They only know people in their company, and being able to go out and meet other people. I just think you find so many similarities and build that, especially for someone young. And you've said it multiple times here. If I wouldn't be where I am, if I didn't have this network of people. So those of you who are listening, who are younger in any position of leadership, or even younger in business, you could be a rep. Who is helping you? Who is your network that you can lean on so that you can learn to be better and learn to grow? I think that's so important.
And you mentioned it earlier, the humility. You can't be afraid of looking, for lack of a better term, stupid. Admitting my ignorance is 100% what has gotten me where I am, because I can't learn something if I'm not willing to admit that I don't know it.
Yes.
And so calling these people and looking at it in the aspect of, Anthony has a BDC where he's constantly posting on Facebook how amazing his show rates are. And while he's got a 70% show rate, I'm scraping the barrel to get 50%. Admitting that sort of defeat, or what the heck are you doing that's getting you a 70% show rate across the freaking board, and having those conversations. And my team and I can't get better if I'm not willing to make those phone calls, if I'm not willing to eat a little bit of crow. And, I would want somebody in the exact same position as me to do the same thing. If they see that I'm thriving in something that they're struggling in, please call me. I want to help you, because there's been times where I did find people that I called and they wouldn't answer, or blocked Facebook or blocked me on LinkedIn because I asked them a question and it's like, what would have hurt you to help me? Like, what would that have
Well,
hurt?
and that's also a very good lesson for people is that when you reach out to somebody and they don't help you, whether they're rude about it or they're just not, that's not you. It's not
Mm-mm.
you. It's their time in whatever they're doing. It's their problem, not yours. It's their reason, their journey. They just don't have time, whatever it is. It's not you. So don't sit there and go, nobody's going to help me. Keep looking, keep finding. There's always someone. And the great thing about it, just go on to YouTube and Google. There's enough of us all posting content out there that you could watch someone's show, listen to someone's podcast. There's always places for you to learn, but hopefully putting yourself in a position to go to events. That's why I recommend dealers and vendors go to events, not so much just to see all the new technology, but it's also to meet other people and build your network
Mhm.
of people. Because oftentimes, to your point, in a dealership, you're outsourced, but in a dealership, when you were there, I'm sure there's a lot of times where you thought, does anybody even know what I do here? I'm the only one that know. But if I could find 5 other people who are in their dealerships all going, nobody understands me. But now I have the ability to call each other and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? You build your own little group. I think that's a key. And I love
Well,
that you said that.
and think about how valuable it now makes that employee who does that. So say that, I was a BDC manager in a dealership and I am seeing, either our show rates go down, our set rates go down, and I lean on my network and call and ask them, even if it's just other BDC managers in the country, like, hey, for some reason, we're following the same processes. We've got the same team I had, we're doing our confirmation calls, and yet the show rate just keeps dropping. What is going on? And I take that information that I learned from the people I've called back to my general manager and say, hey, I noticed a problem. We have a dropping show rate that I can't get a hold of. So I called around to see if this is, single to our area or if this is around the nation,
Right.
what's going on. And this is X, Y, and Z, what I came back with. And I'm going to implement this process over here to try and combat that and try the thing that, maybe Sean Armour recommended to me or Anthony Alagona recommended to me, and I want to see what it does to our numbers. I just wanted to keep you in the loop and make sure that you're okay with that. And think about how much of a breath of fresh air that general manager or dealer principal is going to have. Like, I put the right person in this position.
Exactly. That's proactive. And that, again, that's another tip for any manager, any level, whoever's team you're on, right? And that I think a lot of times people forget is that I move into a management position, I'm alone. No, you're on someone's team,
Yeah.
right? It always goes up. But the more you move up, and really any level, but when move up and me running a company, I want people who are going to solve problems or attempt to solve problems or come in with solutions, or they come in with, what do you think, Shasta, this one or this one? That's great. Don't come in and say, what should I do? Because if I have to tell you what to do, post training you to do what you do. But
Yeah.
if you're constantly coming in, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Now I think, to your point, is I have the wrong person in this position. I need proactive. I need solution.
Yeah.
People who get solutions done.
I think what's funny is, obviously Robin is the CEO of SCP and Epic BDC. And so there was times where I always just saw like, I don't have the power to make these decisions. I need to clear it with her first. And so I would go to her and ask her, hey, what do I do about this? I was that person. Even, being in the position that I am now. And then one day she just started saying, well, what do you think you should do?
Mm-hmm.
What would your recommended solution be? And made me like kind of stop in my tracks and think for a second, okay, well, I would do XYZ, then do the thing. And then every time it started being that thing, then do the thing. And she stopped giving me the answers. And I'm like, oh, I see what she's doing here. She's making sure that I know these are my decisions to make. And so,
Well, she's also teaching you how to think through it, because the danger is you become a dependent manager.
yeah,
I can't think. So then, God forbid, Robin wants to go on vacation. God forbid, Robin takes a day off. All of a sudden, nothing happens. And we see that I see that in unproductive businesses where it's a roller coaster. When everyone's there, we run smooth. When someone's not here, oh my God. Or that poor person's phone's blowing up. What do I do? What do I do?
Yep.
So that's just bad leadership because they haven't trained. So that switch, I think, is a great lesson.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny as you move up in leadership and you have people underneath you, whether me as the BDC director, I have BDC managers underneath me, learning to implement that with them as well, and do that downwards, and have them start coming up with solutions for issues that they have a question on or whatever. It used to be a running joke around here that that's how things were. That if I took a day off or when I traveled to a conference, that all hell would break loose. And after a while, I was like, okay, it can't be this way. I'm going to be traveling more and more. There's going to be times where I'm gone, and you guys have to be empowered to make these decisions. So while I'm here, what do you think the answer to this is? And so even implementing it downward instead of just upward, instead of the questions that I have that I need answers to,
No, I
but
was
bring
going
it
to
back
ask you that. I was going to ask you, when did you start using it? Because I think that's also for any manager listening to this. Your job is to replace yourself. And I know that's hard to hear, but you're never going to be able to do more if you don't have anyone to do your own position. And I learned that with teams that I mentored, where same thing. If I left or if I took them with me to go somewhere, the good thing was it gave me the opportunity, gave them the opportunity to really clearly know, what did I have to train? What did I have to improve?
Yeah.
Now they went back and did it. So then the next time they leave, maybe it drops just a little bit and you keep refining ultimately. But sometimes that's a fear for managers and young managers listening to this as well, is the fear is, well, if I train Shasta to do my job, they won't need me. And that's silly, because really the person above you is waiting for you to replace yourself because they want to offload some of what they're doing to you because they have more to do. So it always moves upstream. So I really think the fact that it clicked to you to go, I have to ask questions downward. So when someone comes to me, I do the same thing. I think that's really great.
Yeah, it's funny. It all kind of started like one day. I think I literally escaped to a different office just so I could try to get my stuff done, because it was every 5 minutes, hey Shasta, hey Shasta, hey Shasta. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't focus. I can't get done what I need to get done. And there was somebody we have a group chat at work, and someone had put a meme in there of like somebody getting bombarded, and it was all these little hey Shastas everywhere. I'm like, you guys don't understand how true that is. Like, I can't go home without 17 people calling me and asking me 7 questions they already know the answer to.
Right.
And so I reached that point, especially after developing the podcast. And, that takes me away from the floor for at least an hour a week, depending on how many episodes we're doing, not to mention all the extra travel. And so when I made that decision that I was going to do that thing, I knew that I had to start empowering them more, because I'm not going to be as available to you as I have been. And you guys need to start being empowered to make these decisions in my absence. We have the if I die rule around here. So if I were to die today, could somebody step in my position and take over for me?
Right.
And I can very easily say, yes, if I die today, somebody could come take my position and pick it up right where I left it. And I've empowered them to do that. And it makes me feel good. There's days where I'm like, man, I don't really know what to do today. And so then I just hop in and start being a BDR and start texting
Right.
and reaching out to customers and looking through numbers and reports and stuff. But it feels good to work yourself out of a job, because then if Robin needs me, we'll say, for a social grenade demo, then she can call on me for that and knows that I have the ability to do that and help her, sell this new product that we have going on. And so it just makes me available for the things that really do challenge my, my intellect.
Well, I think that's great. And listen, there's never any day where it's like, oh, I don't have anything to do. But it is that constant sense of, I am going to make those 2 people mini Shastas. Right. And if they're not there yet, then that's my focus every day. Whether there's not, quote unquote, anything to do, I'm going to go sit with this person for an hour and refine them and refine them and refine them and polish them and make them better. To your point is either that, or I give up the podcast. I give up all of this because I can't do that. And that's not really great for the company. The company's not going to grow. So in order to do that. And so again, for those of you listening, I hope you've really picked up on Shasta's shared so much, not just because young, but that also applies to any manager at any age, at any level, is that idea of, I have to replace myself, challenging them Don't give them the answer. Ask them for the question. Ask them for the answer. Help them think like you did. That's really, really important. We got a couple minutes, and then we'll tie into some things. If you had to look back, and again, someone's brand new, maybe someone who in your team is saying, "I want to become a manager. I want to do what you do." What are one or two things that you would recommend them to read or prepare or watch or do to be open to receive all the training and the work that you're going to give them? Because sometimes I feel they watch you and they go, "I want that because it looks easy." So what would you say to that young person sitting across from you?
It's funny, we had someone do this. So we hired someone for the BDC. I think she's been with us, God, a little over 2 years now, maybe. And when she interviewed, she said, "Who has the highest position in this department?" And it's funny, Jess was actually the one that interviewed her and told her about me, and she's like, "How do I get that job?" Like, and she came out of the gate asking those questions, and so I immediately thought of her when you asked that. But I would say, specifically to my job, if they want to run a BDC, whether that's at a dealership or outsource, I would say they need to be following the right people on social media. I would connect them with like I said, the mentors I mentioned, Sean Armour, Anthony Algona, anybody who has a podcast that discusses this podcast, ask them to listen to the Chicks in Charge podcast. Michael Cirillo has a really good one. Jen Suzuki has a really good one. Those are probably where I would have them start, because there's so much that you can take in from there. Not to mention all of the free courses that are available out there on social media. But books wise, I've read several that I tie back to all the time. Probably the number one is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I talk about that one all the time. Patrick Lencioni is the author of that, and it's a fable, but really talks about the things that when you're not cohesive as a team, it's always one of those 5 things.
Right.
Anytime we have an issue here in the office and we're not gelling together, we're not, on rowing in the same direction, I can always go back to, okay, where did we lose the absence, or where do we have absence of trust, or is there a fear of healthy conflict here? Which are 2 of the dysfunctions. And so that one I probably recommend to almost anybody who moves up into a manager position here. They have to read that book, because they have to be willing to have that healthy conflict and know that there can never be an absence of trust. So that one I would say for sure. And then we read the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Yep.
That was a really good one too. Just understanding how organizations work and how to handle things when you're in leadership, things that a lot of people don't talk about. What about when your company's losing money, or you can't retain staff, all of these different things that you need to be able to know how to handle that people just don't talk about. So I would definitely start there for sure.
I love that. We'll put those into the show notes. All right. At the end of every episode, listen, thank you. This has been fun, and you've been a phenomenal guest. So don't ever say you're not going to be a great guest. At the end of each show, I ask a few things that, some odd things. First off, since you say you've traveled and now you're moving, going around all different places, is there a place that you have not been to yet that you want to go to, you and your family, you and your husband, or just you? Where would that be?
Gosh dang it. How do I pick just one? We're very much like a family that wants to travel. So probably soonest on the list would be Washington, D.C. It's crazy. I've never been there, but I haven't. We're very big history buffs. And so we watch a lot of like the old war movies and stuff like that. So getting to learn more about, the establishment of the country and all of that stuff is just really cool. Other than that, obviously, I think it's on everybody's list, Hawaii. Again, also more so for the historical aspect, want to see Pearl Harbor and be able to visit that memorial.
Very moving.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That's what I keep hearing. And I'm like, I want to go there so bad. Outside of the country, I want to go to Italy so bad. And no really particular part of Italy, maybe Rome, Naples, but
if and when you decide to go, seriously, if and when you decide to go, just before you go, reach out to me. My brother is big in Italy. He will guide you. He will point you to the right places. He will say, if you're going here, go here. Check this out. So he's done that. He jokingly goes, Pasch tours, and I was like, yeah, someday you're going to be a tour guide. So that's good. Let's see. What's one thing that you personally are working on for yourself that a year from now you're going to be glad you did it?
Ooh, that's a big one. So I kind of just made a decision recently that I don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to end up looking like, but anybody who's not familiar with Women in Automotive is a corporation that's been around for over 10 years, trying to connect women in the automotive space. They have an annual conference every year, just trying to bring people together. And we're almost right at the 1 year mark. A year ago, we decided to start taking events regionally. I say we. I was a part of organizing the very first one, which
Mm-hmm.
was hosted in Kansas City and Missouri. That we didn't know if this was going to be like a full-time thing, like we're going to start doing these around the country, or what it was. So there have been 4 now for sure. There's been a couple other that got planned and fell through because of weather or one thing or another. 4 that have been planned. The 5th one is getting ready to happen. And as of last week, I told Veronica Dunford, the owner of Women Automotive, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna take these over and spearhead this, and I'll be the contact point on behalf of WIA for all of these moving forward. And you could tell it was just like a sigh of relief for her, like, oh, thank you. I just did not have time to keep up with it.
Good
So
for you.
I'm now the self-appointed director of Women in Automotive Socials. So
There you go.
think in a year when I look back and you said that, people can't always make it to these events or conferences, that was another reason why we started doing these, to bring them to people's backyards
Yes.
so that they have an opportunity to learn, to grow, to network without having to hop on a plane and be gone from their family for a week. It's hard, especially when we look at women. They're so much less willing to up and leave their family, their husband, their kids
Mm-hmm.
for X amount of days, just because, just the stress in the back of your head of, does he really have it covered? Like, does he know all of the things? Does he know all the medications? Does he know the
That's so
people to
great.
call if something happens? And it's a real fear, like 100%. And I don't
Trust
want to
me.
sound sexist in any way, but
No, I listen. My
same
wife and
way.
my wife, when we met, we've been married, 23 years. When we first started, she had a full-time job and she was traveling around the world, and I was traveling, and then we had kids, and we joke, we pass each other in the airport, but she was just away taking care of some family things for 2 months. But she said, I can do that because you have it. Like we strove always to have the kids on the same routine, no matter who was there. And so, but she laughs, and she hears that from some of her friends, like, I don't know if my husband could do that. I don't know. And I was like, well, that's because you didn't give him a list. If you give him a list, men are okay. If you expect them to remember things, we're not very good about it. And that's what she always says, the running joke. She goes, this epitomized it. She goes, here it is. Because one day she was asking me decisions. Well, what do you think about this? Or why don't you go and buy something? You could do this, this, or this. And I just looked at her and I was like, don't make me make decisions. Just tell me what you want to get done. And she goes, that's it. She goes, that's men. Just put it on a list. I said, absolutely. Just give me a list. It will get done. But
Yeah.
if it's not on the list, I can't remember. And I was like, and so she left. So provide lists. So again,
The same way. I got 2 teenagers, and they're exactly the same way, where if I want them to get something done around the house, we have a marker board in our kitchen, and I just write it down when I leave for work, like what I need them, and hands down 100% of the time it's always done.
yeah,
But if I tell them in the morning, hey, I need you to clean your room, clean the bathroom,
nope.
vacuum the floors, it doesn't get done.
No, exactly. But I think, again, leadership lesson that we're going to leave you with is, if you want it done, document it, give it to people, make sure they have a checklist. People function really well. So anyway, Shasta, this was phenomenal. Great job. Love
Thank
this.
you so much for having me.
Sure. So tell everyone how they can connect with you online. We'll put it all into the show notes as well.
I'm all over social media. Facebook is probably the easiest way to catch me. Shasta Haddock on Facebook. LinkedIn, pretty active there as well. My cell is 417-540-5955, and I'm Shasta at epicbdc.com. So it's super simple. Or Chicks in Charge is everywhere, getting ready to be rebranded as the I'm a Car Chick podcast. So you heard it here first.
There you go. We're breaking news. I'm a Car Chick podcast. I love that.
Yep.
All right. Well, audience, thank you again. Shasta, audience, you know the drill. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the little notification so you get that every single week. Also, leave a comment. A lot of times we share them with the guests, but more importantly, a lot of times we get great ideas for topics, what you want to hear, and I will make sure we talk about it on any podcast platform. Please make sure that you like it, review it, and again, please share it out, because I know there's someone in your network that can benefit from what Shasta and I were talking about today. So we do appreciate the time. I want to thank the team at Black Swallowtail Studios for engineering the episode, Connor Pasch for putting it together later on, editing it, making it look way better. And as always, we understand, both Shasta, who runs a podcast, we understand that there's a lot of places that you can watch content. The fact that you spend time with us today, listen to her podcast as well, it's great. That means a lot to us, and we really do appreciate that. So, as I say at the end of every episode, leadership is not a title. It is your job to help your team grow, activate them, let them learn, but at the same moment in time, you keep learning. Thanks for being here. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks again. Look forward to seeing you, Shasta, in person very soon.
Yes. Thanks, Glenn. Thank you, everybody.